This is Team Objection Podcast for January 17th, 2023, episode 560. If you're in the chat right now, I'd love to know if that intro played properly. Either the Final Fantasy music that usually precedes it or the actual sound that goes with the intro video. It's been having problems lately, and I don't know why, but I assume it's OBS.
Can they hear us talking in the intro?
No, that's
Dave's
muted
like,
for them.
It was talking through the whole intro, and I didn't know if, he was, saying anything terrible. Or was he? He wasn't.
No, that's muted for that. We can hear it. It worked. Okay, great. Because I did change the setting from last week, and it's hard for me to tell without headphones. I'm trying to look at it on YouTube, so thank you, Josh. So we'll jump into things here in a moment. I mean, the title is this way for a couple different reasons. Obviously, this is a Suns cast where only one of us wore Suns gear. That's okay because...
There's a reason. There's a reason I wore this particular shirt. I'm trying to remind myself of the good days. The good old times of the long, long ago.
The good old times.
2021.
2 years ago, when the window was open for about 2 months.
I remember the days when we won game 1 and 2 of the finals, and people were talking like, "Wow, can the Suns be a dynasty?" Which was stupid, I'll admit, but it felt good. It felt like right in my heart.
I wonder, were we actually not even that good? Then this makes me think we weren't even that good then. Look back, we beat a hobbled LA team.
Don't do this.
Yeah,
no, I mean, I'm not
even going to entertain this discussion.
I'm not going to say we didn't deserve it, and had we won a ring, there's no asterisk. But if we're we just need to get back to that level, it's well, what was that level really? We beat the hobbled Denver team. We beat a hobbled Clippers team. We lost to a decent Milwaukee team.
Do you remember when we had the best record in the league last year and it wasn't particularly close? No, we're really good.
But what is that proving to me when we... this is the issue that I have, though. You can see at least where I'm coming from. We couldn't win. And you know this. We were talking about this. We had the red carpet rolled out for us on that finals run. And it felt like if we don't win it now, it's only going to get harder. And we knew that. And we didn't win it. Then last year we had the best record. For what? To prove we're a regular season team is what it feels like.
It shows that winning a title is really hard.
Yeah, I mean, sure.
So, there you go.
So it is a Suns cast, but I also have it titled this way because we've been dealing with not record snowfall per se. I mean, technically one day was a record, but we've seen much worse storms than this. But this is one of those 2 or 3 times a decade kind of snowstorms, and Dave was actually here. Perhaps longer than originally intended, although we kind of knew as he was looking to come up that the weather's going to be bad. So while nobody likes weather discussion except for old people, the more important point was we did have Dave up here for his birthday. We got to spend time together, and the sun was out other than a couple times this morning for no part of it. So it felt like a metaphor, a really, really obvious metaphor.
Yeah, and I was going to say I want to pull a Dave and talk about the snow because it's, it doesn't bother me. We talked about this. Driving in the snow is fine. But when I was driving home today and it was a blizzard, which came out of nowhere. It was pretty clear, Dave, and then it was a blizzard again. And I'm driving and I'm squinting and I'm eating an apple because I like to eat while I drive in the snow.
It's a terrible idea.
It's it's like my drug, and I'm driving, and I usually don't talk to myself, that much, but I was here, and it's you bitch. If they go slow because I'm I can't make it up the hill. If you're going 2 miles an hour, what are you doing? And then people were, the road to go to our house up that big hill, and it's people going 50 miles an hour. They're walking on the street during the storm. And I was crazy. That's crazy. That's crazy. Just talking to myself the whole time.
And there's no sidewalks, so I kind of get it. I mean, you don't have an alternative except not walking in anywhere at all.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to run over. That's going to be the, you're going to make the evening news.
I bet for some of them, was it by the Chevron? Was it
yeah.
Because that could be a way you could get some quick supply. If you run out of ketchup and you're not going to go to the store, you can walk over to the gas station, I guess. But yeah, if the roads are compromised, it might not be the best time to try. Maybe just don't have ketchup.
And then we get stuck. And we're trying to get Maisie in. I gave her a route to get home. Turns out there were no routes to get home. Everything was bad. Dave, I was the car whisperer, though. You've been so proud of me. It was imagine the area where she got stuck. Now imagine a whole drag of that. I don't know, 100 feet of just that stuck. And we got her out. And I was we're going to have to do this inch by inch. And I just I was consumed with the spirit of the car whisperer, and I was just and just kind of sliding, just kind of massaging, be good girl, rubbing the dashboard, and she made it in that one go.
Impressive.
Yeah.
I have realized, especially after driving on the freeway, that I thought was clear, and then I got 2 inches in the hour between your house and getting out of the snow, that I hate driving in snow. I never want to do it again, ever, ever, ever again. I'm done. I hate it.
Well, you know who to call.
The car whisperer.
Me, yes, that's
All
correct.
Right, so I'll have you drive 25 miles down the I-17 to catch me.
Hey, I would have if I had to. If there was some way I could get to your car, I would do it.
No, that's very nice of you. Fortunately, my car I brought the big car, and it worked out really well because I had no issue whatsoever in this one.
You had, as an indication of the snow that fell, probably 6 feet on top of your car.
It was not 6.
It was 2.5
like
to
4.
3.
It was like
and
really
with the wind
tall.
and some of the stuff falling on top of it, it could have been as many as 4. Yeah.
It was 3. It was probably 2 to 3 at least, but yeah.
And this is the shit I can't stand. I don't mind some of the snow, and we get snowfall that if we get like 6 to 12 inches at once, it's like okay, it's an encumbrance, it's a pain, but like this stuff where it's multiple days, it just never stops. You can't plow it anywhere because it just comes again. You can't really push it to the side too much. If you shovel, you have to shovel 2 or 3 more times. Like that's the stuff where it's like. That's when I don't want to live here anymore.
I've never had it where we had a snowblower. I got the snowblower out. Where it comes down faster than I can snowblow it. I've never seen that before.
I am so happy that I ended up leaving when I did, because I wasn't leaving if I waited any longer.
Yeah, well, I mentioned it in our text thread, but you were about 20 minutes away from being out there and not making it down, and then having to come back or something. Because now, granted, I don't know if the southbound ever actually closed. The northbound did at 2 different junctures at separate times, but it was going to be bad, and we knew there was a possibility of that. But everything that was supposed to be kind of like throughout the day seemed to just combine into this one little, 2 different little bad stretches. The one you got out just before, and the one Sean went out in later.
People don't know how to drive in the snow.
No.
Well, no, I don't.
Here's the frustration. Because they either take the turns too fast or, ironically, they go way too slow.
Yep.
Unless you have, like, all-wheel drive, you got to, like, use your speed to get up the hill, you idiot.
It's scary. I mean, you won't be able to be smart about it and, like, use physics and kind of think your way through, so I feel like I can do that. But also, it's terrifying. My arms were literally hurting because I was driving the entire time like this, just...
I do the same thing. I'm a white knuckler when it comes to this stuff. I get super anxious about it, but I'm also not a bad driver in it. And at the end of the day, no matter what I'm anxious about, it's not going to solve a physics problem.
Nope.
Where if you're going 1 mile an hour, like Sean said, you're not going to make it up an incline that's slick. It doesn't work that way.
Well, and then so I'm sitting there passing people on the right, which looks terrible, but it's like I got to keep my speed up. You have a huge truck, I don't. So
I think that's really the source of all my anxiety too. Is like if it's just me, I don't really care if I can go at my pace. Whether that's I usually take my time, but again, you have to be smart about revving it when you need to get to certain spots. It's when there's somebody like behind me or too slow in front of me that's when I'm like, oh my god, come on, what are you doing? I fucking hate you.
Yeah,
that's the stuff that gets
Dave.
me.
So we were trying to get the cars in the garage again, and the 2 cars were in the street, and we were like, I mean,
we're stuck.
You can wait. You have like both of you big vehicles like SUVs or trucks, and they just waited, and like I've never seen that before. If you don't want to help, you don't have to help. But I'm kind of like either get out and help or just go around. Like I don't know why you just decided to wait.
Huh.
It was just weird. It was very bizarre. I didn't really want their help, but don't just sit there.
By the time somebody did finally get out, we pretty much were done.
Yeah, thank you so much for your help now. When we're clearly done. But the cars are both in the garage. They're like, do you need help? Yeah, maybe 20 minutes ago that would have been really nice. Now that you can see that we're done. No.
But they walked away being like, well, I was a good Samaritan today.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, punch my heaven ticket. I'm like, no, I don't think so. You did.
A man literally said that.
Yeah, I know. That's where I got it from.
Tried to get they were 95% done, but I tried to help them over the finish line, and they refused my help. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Blessed day to you.
And I don't know what they could have done, but they don't know
Not
that.
much.
They don't know. Maybe
they might have a shovel or some other supplies in their car.
Yeah, they could have asked, and we were going to be like, no, sorry, we don't. You only have 1 shovel, which is a really bad idea. Dave, Maisie had a great idea to get soil out and put soil on the driveway because it was so slick, and it worked like a charm.
Yeah, makes sense. Just have the grip.
And let this be a PSA that in addition to needing to know how to drive in these conditions, you also need to be prepared. This is something we need to do for you and Maisie too, which is put some of that material in your car.
Oh, yeah. And buy another shovel.
Yeah, and I don't have it in mind right now either. Now, granted, I don't really have a job that requires me to go out in this stuff, so it's not as important for me, but like you should have kitty litter or soil or something like that in your vehicle so that if you are on location, because like we have it in the garage, we used, it was all fine. It's just in general, if you're in these conditions, like make sure you have a shovel in your car or at least a scraper at minimum, like all this stuff, a blanket, water, like don't just go out in these conditions and be like, the devil may care. I don't know.
I will say, even driving up there this weekend, knowing what I was potentially facing, I had food, I had blankets, I had water, I had stuff. In the off chance that somehow I got stuck for a period of time, I was not going to be cold.
Yeah, and it might not even be like people think it's going to be, oh, well, that's like if I slide off the road into a snowbank and I'm there for like a day until they can dig me out. It's like, no, it could just be the highway gets shut down when you're on it. So you're fine. You're just sitting in the middle of a snowy highway, but you can't go anywhere. Mm-hmm. So you better have supplies just in case.
Yep.
So this has been your PSA about driving in snow.
Speaking of places the sun don't shine, Dave played Hades this weekend. How'd you like it, Dave? Impressions?
I almost threw my Switch across the room when I lost to Hades at the very end of the run, and Sean and Michaela were both encouraging me, telling me how this is part of the experience, and I just wanted to flip you off because I was so mad that I lost because I was that
so
close.
Nothing positive.
No,
just the one thing you want to throw the Switch across.
No, I mean, I will say, like you said, the voice acting was very good in it. The gameplay is it's actually has some fun elements to it. I like how you can change a character around, and I kind of understand building a little bit better. It was more difficult to understand what that means to build. Sometimes I kind of just like, ooh, that looks nice, and I don't really combine the powers well, or I'm like, am wishing for something I had the previous run, and it's like, crap, I need that.
So you're learning. This is a skill you need, because this is why you didn't like Across the Obelisk. So we're building your skills.
Yes, it feels very different in that sense, but yes.
It's like when you're a kid and you're like too dumb. Well, not actually dumb, but like you don't excel with like the standardized testing. So they find another way to administer an IQ test. That's what we did. We found another way to administer training to you without it feeling like this is training.
Chris, did you hear that? He just called me dumb.
No. You're like Shikamaru. Actually, they did that in Naruto. They had to like hide an IQ test because he was too lazy to apply himself for their regular test. You're like Shikamaru. That's it. He's great. He's one of the best characters in Naruto.
Dumb and lazy. That's what I heard.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyways, we've delayed the Suns cast long enough. I just suppose we should get to it.
Probably. I mean, who just wants to start ranting? How about that?
Well, let's summarize it for the non-Suns fans, of which there are people that tune into this and still, for some reason, and respect for you for doing it, kind of wade through this, as casual fans. The Suns are basically 5-18 since the start of December, and that's bad. I don't think you need to be a massive basketball fan to understand that that's terrible.
It's the worst record in the NBA in the same stretch.
Yeah, that's worse than teams that are trying to lose.
Yeah.
Partly because there's just so much talent in the NBA that there really are no, like, we remember like the 8 and 9 win teams of like the late 2000s when tanking really started to push itself to the forefront. Now even teams that are trying to be bad still have good young players on them, and like they're still going to get like 20 wins. So yeah, being the worst team in that stretch is bad. Now we know why. It's not just because we've been terrible, although we have, but it's more so because conveniently right around that date is when Devin Booker disappeared. And we at some point maybe need to have a small discussion on the fact that he played 4 minutes on Christmas and then died for another month. But let's not worry about that right now. Point being, though, 16-7 with him on the floor, even without Cam Johnson for a good stretch of that, even without Cam Payne for a good stretch of that, with Chris Paul getting off to a terrible start, 16-7. And then, I mean, to say the wheels fell off doesn't even do it justice. Like the wheels, the axles, the entire shell of the car, it exploded, it fell off a cliff.
It's what I like to imagine Maisie was like this morning driving in the snow. It just was a disaster. It was complete disaster.
Right.
And I don't know who's driving in tears like Maisie was in this analogy. I guess Monty Williams, who's like looking at the shambles around him, just like, what happened? It wasn't supposed to be like this. I guess that's the analogy here.
I think we're in trouble. Yeah. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, we had like a sandwiched really bad losses, one of which was to Dallas. Devin Booker was still playing. He was still on the team. Now there's no Cam. I can't remember if Chris Paul was hurt during that time. Who cares? He sucks. So it's like everybody's saying wait until Devin Booker comes back. I'm like, yeah, True, but also I think we have bigger problems than that. We're losing to teams we'd have no business losing to unless we're just not that good anymore.
Well, I mean, without Booker, without Cam Johnson, without Cam Payne, we're running out a G League, not G League, but just slightly above G League lineup, really.
I know, but would you agree that, like, we'll pull up the Dallas game again. It was one game, but we've had so many games like that one where you weren't just like, oh, well, we're fighting, but we're just getting beat. It's like there seemed to be an issue with like effort or scheme or something that was like just fundamentally not working. We've had more fight recently, still losing by 30 than we had during that stretch. Ayton does not look engaged. I know it's if you're an Ayton defender, you're so frustrated. You're pulling your hair right now because you keep hearing that. But I'm gonna keep saying it. He doesn't look like he cares at all, and he is unwilling to change his game even a little bit. Even on the defensive end, which he was willing to do, now he is not anymore.
It's difficult to watch because the reason I feel like we paid Ayton, and we're getting into Ayton right now. Great, this is the big one. This is the big topic. The reason we paid Ayton what we did, and the reason he was worth what he did, was all shown throughout the 2021 playoffs. To me, that was it. Like that to me solidified him as the player, because you have to have that sort of player to make a championship run. We found that out in that 2021 playoffs. Him playing Jokic to essentially a draw in that series was the reason we swept them, I think. That set up the groundwork for, okay, everybody else can go do what they need to, and then we swept them for that big reason. The rebounding's not there. That's the big thing to me. The rebounding is just absolutely not there. Like I just was pulling up his stats are so hard to look at because I pulled up the game since Devin Booker got hurt the first time. So Devin Booker got hurt for the first time on December 7th. Since then, Ayton's had 10 rebounds a game, which seems fine. He's had 15 and 10 basically since then. And it's just like, 18 and 10 is what it is actually. Sounds good, but it's also his rookie year. He's just not taking advantage of the situation, which you figured that someone who's getting paid this level and realizes what his responsibility is would do. But he's not. He's just not.
It's fascinating because you can use Devin Booker as a case study for DeAndre Ayton, even though they're nothing alike as players, but only in one particular way. When Devin Booker got his bag, everybody went, yeah, makes sense. And his level of play continued to increase slightly. He was already pretty much established as who he was. He's continued to get better. But, like, for the most part, he was already who we thought he was. And everybody went, yeah, that's a max guy. Ayton, and this has been one of the safest spots for him in any of Suns fandom, as we've bent over backwards to try and justify this pick over Luka, has not shown any of that whatsoever, particularly in a time when the team needs him to step up. It's one thing to be an 18 and 10 guy on good efficiencies with good defense when you're not a max player and when you're the fourth, maybe third best player on the team. When you're surrounded by G Leaguers and castaways and third string players, that doesn't fly anymore. Being passive doesn't fly anymore. Having defensive lapses doesn't fly anymore. So, as somebody who really has wanted Ayton to succeed, and still does, especially while he's still in a Suns uniform, I don't hate the guy, but there was that play the other night that I talked about with these guys off air, but you can find a gif of it where like he has the ball kind of knocked away as he's trying to do a dribble handoff, and he just stands there and looks at it. Mm-hmm. And it gets picked up and taken the other way for a dunk. And he looks over at Mikal Bridges, who's further away from it than him, and like, aren't you going to go get that? It's like, motherfucker, you lost the ball. Yeah. You created the situation. Go get it.
And even less egregious, still frustrating me, was when he was admittedly open for a pass. Torrey Craig didn't see him or didn't hit him, one of the two. Shoots it, and he just stands there. Just looks. Doesn't try. I mean, and it's hard because you have Steven Adams on the other end who is jockeying for position every defensive, every offensive rebound that's there. He just stands, just watches, just looks. Doesn't try to gain position, doesn't find a body to box out. Just watches. Yeah. You're a traditional center. You're not even like a good stretch five. That you absolutely can't also be mediocre at that.
And that's what the difference is that when we talk about, like, people say Ayton's level of effort has been the issue. And I think in many ways that has been overblown because Ayton does have such a natural feel for things and just a fluid movement that it looks like he's not trying. But instances that you guys both just mentioned there, when you see him just standing, when you see him just like staring, it's like, that's not just fluidity. That's not making it look easy. That's just truly not going after it because you're losing. And then what? So now we're gonna have a $30 million a year guy. If we start losing again, that's just gonna sit and stare at the ball, killing any potential trade value it might have, and no one's gonna pay top dollar for that. And then we just have him sitting there for the next 5 years. Great.
Yeah. Look, and he doesn't have an engine. And like it, I would even dispute that, Dave, of like, well, he's so good, he makes it like look easy. It looks like he's not trying. No, you would be able to see if he was trying. It's the what is it? Hard work beats talent that doesn't work hard, basically, the situation we have. He doesn't work hard. By all accounts that we have heard, he does not work that hard. Like, you hear Devin Booker. Even people don't like Devin Booker. What do you know about him? He's playing all summer because even the thing you hate about him where he doesn't like double teams, he's out there, he's playing. He's a baller. He trains all the time, and you know it. What do you hear about Ayton? He's like playing too many video games. That became a concern. Too much gaming. Believe it if you want or not, but the words you hear of Ayton are not. That's a real hard worker. He cares about the game. And you don't have to. If you don't have an engine, you don't have the drive, then fine. But we can also judge you, and we can figure out if you're the future of our team or not.
I guess, what does he want?
Not us, somebody who matters.
I know. Well, I mean, it matters, but what does he want? Because in some ways, I think this quote was overblown by the haters a lot, but when he said he wanted to make it to a second contract, to me said he wanted to last in this league. That's kind of how I took it. Unfortunately, right now he's kind of proving that he just wanted the money of it. And to be fair, he doesn't have to work that hard to make the money, because at the end of this contract, assuming he can still put up 18 and 10 consistently, he'll get another contract. It won't be a max contract. It's not going to be $40 million, $50 million a year like Booker's getting soon, but it's going to be 20, 25.
It's just interesting to me because, like, you don't say that, right? Like, even if it is your only desire, you should know better not to say that. Maybe you need some PR people. I don't know. But even if you wanted the second contract, like, that can be a driver, I guess. But, like, let it drive you. Not like I'm going to put in the minimum effort to get a second contract. The harder you play, the better results you have, the more money you're going to make.
It's almost feels like, all right, I got my raise. Cool. All right, I'm good.
Yeah.
And that's not what you want. And when you see someone, and it's hard for me too, because if he really is motivated by the money, look at Devin Booker, who signed his max contract 3 years ago, I think it was, maybe 4 years ago now, and is now eligible for an extension where he's going to make $60 million a year at the end of this contract.
And again, while that's a huge number, given the current economy of the NBA, we go, yeah, probably worth it. Can clearly be the best player on a championship level team.
Yeah, and you know what, Aiden, let's say it's not laziness. Let's say he is trying his ass off. He's just too much in his head. Well, that's, he's, what is this, 5th year in the league now?
It's 2018 draft, so this is his 5th year.
Starting to be, you are who you are at this point. You can grow still, but it's been some time. So if it's not an effort issue, and it is just, he gets in his head to the point that it makes him, like, completely useless, well, then whatever. At the end of the day, he's not producing. Right? You're thinking. Yeah. I want you to have a rebuttal.
It's not.
Or
it's not. So much, yeah, I mean, you're right. He's not producing, because what you would expect, someone who years ago had a beef with Joel Embiid, I won't even say it that far. They kind of like yelled at each other over Twitter a little bit or whatever. Like, that was kind of, it felt like at the time, like, oh yeah, that's what I want to be. Ayton wants to be Embiid. He wants to be better than Embiid someday. Well, guess what? If your best players are out, Embiid's going to score 35. He is. He's proven that time and time again. He's getting 35 and 15. That's what he's doing. Ayton, you're not doing that on a consistent basis at all. It's 18 and 10, which is fine. That is fine.
And I didn't read too much. I didn't read too much into the Embiid thing, the drawing or whatever.
Yeah.
But man, this is so foolish. Like, why would you go kick that dragon when you have no clue, clearly, what that takes?
And it's funny because he came into the league like, oh man, he's all offense, no defense. And then we had the finals run. He's like, oh man, what a defensive stud. He's going to be the anchor for years. And now it's like, all right, I guess he's just a little bit good at both.
Yeah.
Great.
What we're learning about the NBA is that, positions continue to matter less and less. That's been a trend for a while now, so that's not a new development. But also that shot creation is king. And that doesn't even necessarily have to be either all for yourself or all for teammates. Some players obviously do both. Booker has a good blend of that, even though he's primarily a scorer. Chris Paul, the opposite side of the spectrum, usually gets teammates involved more, especially now as he's getting old and slow. But, you don't even have to be able to do both. Like, Jordan Clarkson is not a great distributor, but he's a 6 Man of the Year candidate because he can get his own shot, and that's extremely valuable in a lot of different situations, like the playoffs where iso ball gets king, at the end of shot clocks in any game. Like, that skill makes a huge difference, especially as offense-oriented as the NBA is now. DeAndre Ayton can't create his own look worth a damn. In any scenario.
He doesn't even look. This is what I know part of it's scheme, whatever. 90% of his offense, it feels like he goes up, gets the ball at the top of the key, and this is a handoff. Never even looks to the hoop. His back is to the hoop from 15 feet away. He's only looking to hand it off. Do you know how easy? I know you know how easy that is to guard. You don't have to do anything. You know he's not going to come at you.
And it's hard too because he's got such a good jumper from that area. He's a great shooter from that area. He's very consistent in that. When he does go to the hoop, we saw a play the other night, the Memphis the other night, where he caught a ball on a roll and took one power dribble in and went up hard and hit a hook shot, like a little baby hook in the lane. It's like, that's the type of thing you want to see. Now, would I love to see him pull the McHale a couple of times where you catch that ball at the elbow, fake the handoff and go? I would love to see that. I think that type of movement would really help his offense and open up the floor for everybody else a little bit more because they have to worry about that.
Yeah.
But we've seen none of that. We haven't seen him catch the ball, fake a handoff, turn and square up and try to take him off the dribble or anything like that. And I don't know whether that's just not enough work by himself, not enough coaching to work him to that if he doesn't want to, if he just can't figure it. I don't know what it is because I'm not there in practices. But it's difficult to not see the expansion of the game.
And to a certain extent, you can even blame Monty Williams for this.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Definitely was.
You can blame all sorts of things for our situation, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But, like, Monty's scheme sort of relegates Ayton into being a screener and dribble handoff guy because it is guard-oriented. It's about swinging the perimeter, making quick decisions, leveraging the defense. So I get that to an extent. However, if you look beyond box scores and just kind of have somebody pass the eye test, he has no handle. So even if you're trying to run more sets for Ayton, unless he's basically starting from 14 feet and in, he's doomed. And he's not a very good roller because he can't catch the ball. So if you're trying to expand the ways in which he can score, and if you're trying to be generous and be like, okay, well, this is primarily a scheme issue, he's not being allowed to flourish, he hasn't shown us the ability to flourish when given the chance, so it's hard to determine whether or not he should be given more.
And then my issue with that, with what you just said, well, not issue with what you said, I agree with you. It's like, well, let's break that down further. So out of the two ways he can score, one of them is completely dependent on another person. Mostly dependent on another person. You can roll better or worse than other people. But that's dependent on a guard passing him the ball. So that's one thing totally dependent on somebody else. And he doesn't even do that very well because he can't catch. And he can't finish through contact most of the time. So like, Dave, when you and I do a pick and roll, and we're talking so much under the NBA level, but like, it works because you're a good passer, and a lot of times I didn't do it this last week, but I can finish through contact and usually catch your passes. All these things I didn't do last week, but the point is, like, that's why it's there. That's why it's valuable. Ayton, it just isn't that player, and it makes me so sad when Biyombo goes into the game and within like 2 plays is dunking on a pick and roll. I'm like, maybe the scheme is different, but why? Here's another question I had for you, Chris. And Dave, but you don't watch as many games as Chris does. I've read that, like, well, Ayton's being iced out because the other team is like double and triple teaming him down on the block every time. I'm like, I don't see that much, and I certainly don't see the gravity from that. So like the shots coming in, defense collapsing, and then we get these wide open jumpers. Maybe we just have sucked at those wide open jumpers, so it's not as clear. But that to me doesn't seem like what's happening.
It's a little bit true in the more recent stretch, if only because of the personnel on the floor, because teams are not super scared of Josh Okogie, although he's had a couple of games where he got hot from 3, but like, that's a 32% career 3-point shooter, so teams don't really respect that. Ish Wainwright's come a long way with his shot in the offseason, can definitely nail the corner 3, but if he's out above the break, teams aren't really paying him much mind. Jock Landale, been very good in stretches for the Suns, but can't really. The team was not intended for him and Ayton to be playing alongside each other. When they are, good luck with spacing, and they are definitely coming down and trapping Ayton because he's one of the biggest threats on the floor. So at times, sure, but again, we were seeing these tendencies long before this stretch of injuries that compromised our roster, so I don't really know if I buy that either.
We just have no, I mean, you've already said it, we have no shot creation. We have now one player, out of the starting 5 at least, who can create his own shot. That used to also be Chris Paul, but then he turned 37. So Booker can create his own shot. Even if Crowder was playing, that leaves us one player in the starting five who can create his own shot. And I guess you can maybe kind of do like Damian Lee, Cameron Payne,
Mikhail.
As a third option is
he can create his own shot.
Yeah.
Not well.
We're seeing that was another player's like the reason Mikhail doesn't get as much hate is because you can see him working on his game. Like he's trying, and even when he plays terrible, when he's like 3 of 20 or whatever, he's working at it. And you would never accuse him of not trying hard. It would have been nice to see him come along a little faster. Maybe he's just not that guy.
He's definitely not a number even 2 option, which this leads me to kind of what I was going to say. As much as I love the guy personality wise, as much as I love the guy, for hustle wise and how much he cares and is the Iron Man on the floor playing 40 minutes constantly, he hasn't taken advantage of the situation either at all. I mean, too many games. The Cleveland game last week, 3 of 15 from the floor. I mean, just too many. 3 of 10 against Denver. Just too many times where he's just had stinkers of games, and that's going to happen to everybody. But you feel like this is a situation where you could go like, "Yep, I can become that number 2 option," and it hasn't happened. It just didn't really roll into what you thought it would.
But the problem I have with this is our judgment of Mikhail is based primarily on what's happened since he's become the number 1 option and the only NBA player out of our top 7 in the rotation.
True.
Yeah,
that's not been the case with Ayton. We've seen these things consistently for basically 5 years.
Yeah.
True.
Now, Mikhail could certainly be further along in his offensive development than he is now. It's not to give him a pass, but his game was not meant to be created off the dribble. He's added a little bit of elements of it, and he's probably trying too hard to do it in certain situations, although his field goal attempts haven't actually risen since Booker's been out, which is a little bit strange because it feels like they have, but that's a whole other issue. But the reason Mikhail, like you said, doesn't get the same hate is because I dropped this stat in the off-air, but he runs the most of anybody in the NBA, and this isn't like a Pat Beverly run-around trick y'all thing. He's defending up and down the floor, he's in the passing lanes, he's stealing, and his value as a defender outweighs what we expect from him on the offensive end. If we can get 18 a game out of him consistently, great. And I feel like once we have actual NBA talent around him again, those efficiencies will rise back to where they were. Because back in December, he was shooting 52% on 2s and 43% from 3. He was off to a great start in the season, and now because everybody around him is the walking wounded, that efficiency has fallen off a cliff. It's also why, I haven't taken anything away from the last month of basketball. I don't think there's any lessons to be learned from it, because the things that we thought were the case, like Ayton's struggles, already were before that, and everything else since then is a joke.
Mm-hmm. I mostly agree, except if this was the opportunity, the final test for Ayton. Are you who we thought you were or not? And yeah, he failed completely. Maybe even he's worse off than I thought before. So we're in bad shape. Chris Paul, the odds of him just saving himself for the postseason now, like some people were saying, very slim. I think he's just mostly washed. It doesn't mean he can't play or contribute. Like Jason Kidd played a big role on that Dallas championship team, but his usage was not the same. Chris Paul continues to dictate the offense despite being unable to do so.
Yeah.
It's a huge problem.
There's something to be said for the fact that when he was out and we were still being successful, Campaign as a starter was maybe in his best stretch. Now, he can't stay healthy either, so it's not like you can depend on that as a solution, but it feels like this team is meant to operate with high pace, and that's not Chris Paul. It never was, and it certainly isn't at this stage of his career. Because now you get, Mikhail leaking out. He's got that really good, long-ass Euro step when he gets out on the fast break. And, Cam leaking out for threes when he's not injured for 50 games a season. There is a perfect world where this team is the best team in the NBA. But that utopia might be completely out of reach.
And we just need another shot creator. Dallas exposed us. Maybe it was COVID. I don't think so. I don't know, though. It was so bizarre, maybe. We just got exposed. They just threw all their defenders at Booker. Chris Paul was 37 by this point. And then that was it. They were funneling so many shots to Jay Crowder in that early going of that game. And he was pretty open. You just can't hit shit. He sucks. So Jay Crowder couldn't hit. And Booker was doing his... Had Booker force more, then you're going to get here comes the hero ball from Booker, which I don't understand. I don't get that at all. And then by the time we had any life, it was way too late. We played him even, Dave, I think in the fourth quarter.
Oh, great.
Unfortunately, we were down by 50.
Yeah,
but,
I remember the YouTube video of Chris Paul hits a huge shot to cut the lead to 42.
Yeah, the reference has been posted 100,000 times. It's not fucking funny anymore.
No, it's not.
It was actually kind of funny for a while, even though I'm bitter about it. I was like, yeah, that was kind of like, why was he in that fucking game? Who fucking cares? You're down 50 in the fourth quarter. What is he going to do?
Yep.
Keep his playoff averages? But now that and the Luka face, which, by the way, didn't even happen with that score that's in the meme, but, you know, whatever, it's a meme. It's not supposed to be accurate. Point being, like, the Dallas series happened. Who knows what the fuck went on? There was a weird series even before the last two collapses. Like, it was all blowouts. No consistency to it. No rhyme or reason.
But I'm disheartened because when we did the show following the Dallas game, we were like, this is not just a loss. This is the type of loss that can really matter and linger and shows you some things. And we hope that's not the case. Here we are months later. We're still talking about it because it did matter and it did expose us. And we haven't.
But this is where you're going to get pushback from me. I don't talk about the Dallas series, and I don't think it does matter. I think those problems existed before the Dallas series. I think that problem started when they didn't give Ayton his fucking extension.
Well, sure.
They festered, and they were made worse by the Dallas series. No question. Like, the team that showed up there was a gut punch beyond anything that could have built to that point. But again, we were 16-7 and the number one seed in the West before this all went to shit.
Yep.
And now that's because of injuries. Now, look, we can't play the injury card because, as we've already mentioned, teams had it in the playoffs. And look at the landscape of the NBA this season. Everybody's had somebody out for some time. Like, trying to make an all-star team pick right now is going to be confusing because, like, all the top candidates have missed, like, 15 games, Devin Booker included. Like, there's a ton of injury problems across the landscape of the NBA. That means we're probably going to have to go down in season length here because it's becoming a joke. The point being, though, we don't even know, like, what are we going to get out of Jay Crowder? Because before I'm willing to write this team off, we were 16-7, first in the West, no Cam for almost all those games, no Chris Paul for half of them, no Jay Crowder or a replacement. So I don't even think it's that far-fetched to say that this could be fine. Now, we have to actually pull our heads out of our ass in time to be in the top 10 to make sure we could peak at the right time, which is to say in a play-in game. But, like, until we hit the trade deadline, now, if James Jones butchers this and Jay Crowder is for some reason still on the roster or traded for shit, then by all means, open season on writing this team off. I'm not off the bandwagon yet. I'm not saying you are, but, like, I think this team is still one of the 6 or 7 best teams in the NBA if healthy. I really do.
The like you said, the 16-7. Of course, it happens to be Dallas was the turning point game. It's really weird how that worked out from timing.
Yeah,
it's just coincidence.
It was, like, certainly ironic and annoying, yes.
Just, it was coincidence. But like, when you look at the roster, if you start reading this roster when it's healthy, it's like, oh, this looks like a pretty good team. You look at the current roster we just rolled out against Memphis the other night, it's like, oh, God, okay, that's not great of a team. So when you put those pieces back in, it's like, okay, we're not going to finish first, obviously, but we had a first place team through that time. Devin Booker was an MVP candidate up into that time. When he was scoring 40, he had a stretch of 40-point games. He had a 58-point game in there. We have the tools that are there as long as we can integrate those people back in as they come back from being injured, and the hopeful Jay Crowder trade where we can get a piece that's actually helpful to this team.
I guess I'm the super cynic now. I'm not usually, lately I have been, but usually I'm not. Like, I'm usually in the middle on the win totals. I think even the 58 point, that just shows you Devin Booker's greatness. I'll never be down on Devin Booker. He's great. Boom won the game by like 2 points or something crazy. And it took him 58, and that was very close to being yet another blowout in that troublesome stretch. So I am nervous. I don't have faith in James Jones. All of his picks, like, give me one stellar pick. I could have said Cam Johnson, but the question mark on him was he always got hurt. Well, he's hurt all the time still. So it's like a Michael Porter Jr. thing. And this is what we said about Michael Porter Jr. Well, Denver, that's what happens when you get a guy. You knew his history. Cam had that history. James Jones went for him anyway. So time will tell if that's a good pick or not. And Dave, you brought this up. Chris Paul, yeah, that was a good get. What GM wouldn't do that when Chris Paul's like, hey, I want to come play for you guys. Let's make it happen. That was more Chris Paul than James Jones. So you're like, what other, where he's failed in the draft, Tyrese Halliburton and others. And, like, where has he really succeeded? I'm really nervous. And he seems like kind of, a prick is a hard word. I think it's too strong, but definitely not easy to work with.
In some ways, I prefer my GM to not be spilling all the secrets of the team on the radio like Ryan McDonough always did.
Yeah, I mean, true. But I'm not comparing to Ryan. I hate Ryan.
Yeah, he's better than Ryan. That's not a hard bar to clear, though.
there were certain moves that made a lot of sense. I mean, getting Jay Crowder in the first place for the taxpayer.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's a good move. Getting JaVale McGee last year, I thought was great.
JaVale McGee, Damian Lee, Josh Okogie, Bismack Biyombo,
yeah.
building pieces around the core. Now, you can argue those are 10th to 12th guys on a roster, and that's true. They're not going to be the biggest impact, but every single one of our min guys has landed well. Like, who has not panned out from those like vet minimum guys, mid-level exception guys? Like, they've all been successes.
I would say Shamit's a little weird.
And while I think it is fair to drag Jones a bit for his draft record, none of his picks have even been in the top 10. So the return on those are usually not all that good. It wasn't like he was responsible for all the fucking Josh Jackson, Dragon Bender nonsense.
That's absolutely true.
Your hit rate is not super good when you're picking at the low end of the lottery or outside of it. So, like, I'm not excusing it. Again, I think he could have done better in those. But, like, we've gotten a starter-ish out of that slot, and I'm like, that's pretty good. Maybe not great. I'm not going to say he was been a phenomenal drafter, but I'm like, eh. It's more really so like I do think it is weird because the one way you can compare him to Ryan McDonough is, even though it's more so because James doesn't talk about it, he does come off as aloof, distanced. And it's like, okay, maybe I don't need you to be out there all the time talking about your plans and who you're targeting, but to show a little bit more empathy, especially when things are tough. Because, you know, there are times where it's like I see fans want to hit the panic button, and I'm like, okay, we need to stay the course a little bit longer than like 2 bad games. But there are also times when we've lost 5 out of 20, or we've won 5 out of 23, and it might be like, hey, you know, I know Suns fans are a little nervous, but like we're looking at the situation. We have this coming up. Like, that could go a long way.
I mean, and I've heard other GMs have been like, yeah, we don't know how to work with the guy. We don't know what he wants. It's just a mystery. He's just a big question mark. That's not what you want either.
No, you want the guy, you know, the Sam Presti type of guy who's always out there. The even Daryl Morey, who's always out there trying to find the deal and find creative ways to make it happen, get what he needs. I wonder how much the owner situation is hamstringing him. I've heard rumors. I don't know how accurate they are. Of, you know, we need Sarver's approval to make a big trade or to make a trade, which I don't really get why if he's suspended. They're
accurate. Because an interim, what do they call them now? Market directors or whatever the owner replacement is. That governors. There's another word besides governor attached to it. Whatever's attached to the interim guy right now. It's interim something governor.
Yeah, but regardless, I mean, doesn't that it really kind of puts a real weakening, you know, force behind you're suspended for a year, Robert. But you can still control the team. It's fine.
It's bizarre. It is the case, but yeah. Well, how could that be the case? That's a good question. How could they let that happen?
And I don't feel like the new owner coming in doesn't seem like the guy who's going to be like, oh, crap, you're going to trade Jay Crowder and you're making me incur more luxury tax? No, you can't do that. Everything from what it seems is that he's willing to go out and spend the money that's needed. So,
but there is this lingering dynamic that, you know, it's fun to still blame Robert Sarver for some extent of this, where it's like, this is a new owner coming in who might want to make his own stamp on the organization. Maybe that's getting rid of James Jones. Maybe that's having some say in what's coming up at this trade deadline. And now you have the double whammy, too, of like going back to Ayton just briefly. You also need his approval for a trade from him this season. So now you got to go through Ayton and Sarver if you want to go that route. Like, that's kind of a fucking mess.
But to this point, though, I would love to hear, like, I know you want to be professional. You don't want to be like, yeah, this bitch, Robert Sarver, I can't believe it. But as a fan, like, don't you think it'd be valuable to communicate to your fans, here's what's happening? And there is some legal issues with approving a trade. We're trying to figure it out. Anything. Like, it's just keeping people in the know. When has that ever been done right? When has that ever been a bad thing? Just letting your fan base, caring what your fan base feels.
I mean, I think it feels like James Jones is always the type that wants to have his thoughts shrouded in mystery so nobody knows what he's thinking and he can always have the leg up on everybody. But unfortunately, it seems that what that's doing is just putting, instead of a shroud of, you know, a cloud of mystery around him, it's just a wall in front of him that nobody can deal with him. Like you kind of said earlier, Sean, is what it seems like it ends up becoming. Well, and it may be his doom.
Yeah. Well, let's get to the big debate here that I want to have. Maybe no one else wants to have it. But so, you know, kind of two opposite ends of the spectrum. Some people think we're going to come back, get in championship mode, make the playoffs, could even be in the, like, not top 4, but like outside of the play-in. Secured, secured spot. Yeah. Other people saying tank for Wembanyama. I am not in the tank for Wembanyama camp. I think it would not be a terrible idea to, how do I say this? Let the cards play out as they may. So Booker comes back, Chris Paul comes back, and we play how we play. Maybe we put a little bit more emphasis on development because we don't do that at all. But like not running Booker to the ground again, or Bridges that we keep doing, and like kind of watching that. And if we win during that, then great, and let's do it. But if we keep losing and we pull a Spurs and we get a solid draft pick, that I also don't think that's a terrible outcome to just say, yeah, it's kind of a lost season. We had one starter gone for 40 games. We had our star, all-star, first team, second team, all-NBA player out for how many games is it going to be now for Booker? It's a lot.
Going up on 15 now. He's going to miss probably 3 to 4 more, I would bet.
Chris Paul over the hill. We only have to partially pay him next year. Like, I don't know.
It's hard to imagine throwing a season away when you do have Chris Paul, who is getting older and clearly losing a lot of what he had. It's hard to say like, well, this year's done, and it may be, but it's hard to just make that declaration without at least giving it your best shot. And not to mention, like I think I mentioned to you, Sean, earlier today, was trying to get a better position for a draft lottery doesn't really improve our odds that much. We have 6 teams that are 8 games lower than us, or like something like that. 5 teams that are lower than us within 8 games. I don't think we're going to lose that much for them to catch us. Had we started the season 7-16 instead of 16-7, maybe that's how we would have done. But I don't think that's the case here.
And to be fair, I'm not saying let's do that. Like, let's not tank for whatever, completely shut everybody down. But I look at the other side, and I'm like, we continue to put pressure on the bodies of Booker and Ayton if we care about his longevity, and Bridges. It's like, maybe don't do that. Maybe have some kind of like strict, still play him 30 whatever minutes. But once they start getting into the 40s every game for what might be just a play-in spot, and you know what the competitor that I am, and this is kind of hard to say, but I'm also trying to think long term.
And this recent stretch has shown us that, like, you should probably still be playing Damian Lee 15 minutes a night.
Yeah.
Not 35. That's bad. Especially, I mean, Damian's been great, but, like, defensively, we know he's a bit of a liability. Like, there's reasons why he's in this position that he is, and he's been thrust into a bigger role. But he's also shown that, like, you don't need to play Booker 40 minutes a night if you're willing to trust Damian Lee to play that 4 or 5 minute stretch at the start of the second quarter, and maybe, like, 7 at the fourth to give Booker or Paul some more time. Like, there's enough depth to this roster, when healthy, that you should not be doing that.
Yeah.
There's no excuse.
Chris and I were saying we can back this up because it was when we were really good. We're like, we're winning. Things seem to be going well. Why is Chris Paul playing so much right now? Playing upper 30s a game. Like, what? In what world does that make sense?
And we talked about that as a mistake last year before he even got hurt that time.
Yep.
So now, given the evidence of all that happened, and especially now with everything that's happened since then, it does feel like a no-brainer where it's like, I'm not saying necessarily sit him out. Chris Paul doesn't seem like a sit-out guy, but you can play him 25 minutes on certain matchups.
Oh, he's a competitor. All right, well, he's not the coach. And so do what you need to do. And to hear Monty be like, yeah, I ran Booker into the ground. He's like, yeah, that's what we've been telling all of you have been like that. I appreciate the admission of fault, but it's like we're way past that.
And we acknowledge it's not even really his fault because we know damn well that Booker was just like, yeah, I'm going back in.
Yeah.
Because of course he is. Again, we've talked about him. He's a huge gamer. There's no quit in him. So if you're not going to stop him from playing 40 minutes a night, he's going to go, yeah, we need me to play 40 minutes a night. But that's what a coach is supposed to do, and it can't always be kumbaya. I love Monty. He's a great person, and I think he's a good coach, but it's mostly interpersonal, and if you can't actually step up in those spots and mitigate this damage, that's when the questions, I think, start to have to come in.
Yep. So, Dave, you didn't say, are we tanking or not?
We're not tanking. We're gonna get our players back that are coming back from injury. I think I agree with a lot of things you said about the minutes restrictions. I don't think. I mean, I was just taking a look at Chris Paul's stats. I mean, for the most part, he's had 20 games with over 30. He's played 26 games this year. 20 of them he's played over 30 minutes. I think 28 minutes is a lot better time for him. You can try as long as we get Campaign back as well. I think you can play Campaign a little bit more and kind of have more of a balance in between the two of them. 26 minutes each, basically, type of deal. It's not exactly accurate, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It just makes a lot more sense to me to kind of have that mentality for Chris Paul right now in this point of his career, especially like we talked about earlier with the pacing, because it kind of makes sense for a little bit to try to push the pace a little bit. Maybe you play Chris Paul a little bit more in the fourth quarter where the possessions matter more and you slow down the pace a little bit more.
Yeah.
Maybe that type of thing makes a little more sense to me. But I don't like the idea of putting Chris Paul out there 40 minutes. It doesn't make sense anymore.
You can't even really justify it the way that even I used to fall for a little bit, if I'm being honest, where we would have these lineups when healthy where you might not have a starter on the floor, and it felt like panic mode. It felt like, oh, God, we're going to get outscored by like 10 points in these next 4 minutes if we don't have at least Chris Paul or Devin Booker on the floor and blah, blah, blah. Well, we've just watched an entire month and a half of exact lineups just like that for 48 fucking minutes. Mm-hmm. And, yeah, they've been bad, so I'm not saying, like, play them a bunch. But for a 3-minute stretch, if you can't trust a group of NBA professionals to at least try and sort of maintain the lead, and again, if you think Josh Okogie's played well, he should play even better in those shorter stretches because he can go balls to the wall.
Yeah.
He's not worried about trying to sustain that for 30 to 35 minutes. Here's a 4-minute stretch. Go hound Steph Curry for a few minutes while Mikal takes a seat or whatever, right? So this stretch should have shown us that, okay, like Dwayne Washington shouldn't be a DNP CD. Especially if we can't trust Campaign to be Chris Paul's backup, then Dwayne's got to be playing 15, 20 minutes a game. And you can't just be like, well, we'll run point Booker and then Chris Paul will still play 30 plus. Like, fuck no.
No.
It doesn't matter. And we've learned the regular season doesn't matter. We may not have that luxury because of this stretch if we get to April, and, there's like 7 games left and we're like, shit, we got to go like 6-1 or we're going to miss the play. And like, then all bets are off. But there's no excuse for not doing that in January, February.
Yeah.
And you hope, in the optimistic sense, you hope that all of this experience getting this many minutes helps these guys when they play 10 minutes instead of 30 in games when the starters are back in, when we do have our full complement back. You hope that type of thing helps because you've seen Damon Lee can catch fire. You've seen Dwayne Washington can catch fire. You can see the guys who can score. You just hope that they can bring that for those 10 minutes as opposed to where they can't sustain it for 30 minutes.
Dario Saric might not be a corpse, by the way.
Yeah, maybe not.
He looked pretty lively in a couple of games in this most recent stretch. He's still, you can tell his mobility, which already wasn't phenomenal, is still kind of compromised on the defensive end especially. But like that's why he's sort of meant to be a backup 5. Right now he's playing the 4 because we have no 4s. But that's not really him. If you can get him back to a backup 5 role, 10, 15 minutes off the bench for him, we've seen him like really good shot creation. He drives really well for a big guy. Like, there's all sorts of little pieces that fit as long as you're actually having enough pieces to assemble a puzzle. And it's not like one of those things you get from Goodwill and it's missing like 3/4 of the pieces. So I'm not done, but it certainly has shrunk the margin of error. And it does mean that if there is any other injuries or any other down stretch, that it's like, yeah, those questions are going to start getting real loud and it's going to be hard to squelch them.
Yep. Dave, I want you to run, do you have your phone on you?
I have the website up. You talking about Tankathon?
Yep. I want you to run it while I just say, like, here's what I want to do. Tank for one beyond, but we miss him, but we get Scoot Henderson. We have the point guard of the future.
You want me to tell you how many times it takes to get one of those two?
One of those two, yes.
Because one of the Suns reporters did that today. It took them 70.
So I just ran it 3 times and I got the 3rd pick.
But so that's kind of my point. Is are we going to get those first 2? Probably not. But apparently, this draft is stacked with talent. I
mean, the only thing you can argue in favor of soft tanking, because I will never be a proponent of hard tanking after what we went through, and we've seen that the negative effects. Is that I think that's one of those like bird in the hand versus 2 in the bush kind of situations where it's like if we have the 6th pick because everything went to shit, I think that's better to trade than it would have been before this season where like, oh, Suns first. Well, they're going to be, I mean, who knows where, but like the 22nd pick or, whatever they would be, right? So in a stacked draft, that could be a meaningful asset to package with whatever. It won't be Jay Crowder at that point. He'll already be gone. But if you wanted to include it with Ayton or something, that would be more beneficial than finishing fucking 16th and trying to trade that pick. But there's too many veterans on this roster. They're not going to do that. The only way that's going to happen is if it's forced because of injuries or something else.
Yeah. I'm at 35. Hasn't happened yet.
Okay, keep going. I think...
Because, like, imagine taking... The only way you're going to lose is if Booker doesn't play. because he's too good for us to not be in games, and if we're in games, he's not coming out, and nor should he. Fuck that. If you have a chance to win, you go after a win. So unless we're down by 20 in the fourth quarter, like, you're not prying Devin Booker off the court. And because he's too good, there's no way we finish below like 30 wins this season. And that's going to put us out of reach of the Spurs, the Rockets.
I just worry, honestly,
Hornets.
Even though I agree with you on this take, actually, except at some point we're going to run it. He keeps getting like soft tissue shit and like non-contact. And it's starting to get worrisome. And I wonder if we're going to need to just say, yeah, we're close in this game, but you've already played for 38 minutes tonight. You're done because we can't afford you to get hurt again.
Well, this goes back to what we talked about before, though. You can't be playing, like, he can't sub out for 3 minutes in the first half. So that you're not in the situation where that 38 minutes in crunch time.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's where it has to be better, because you're never going to be able to do that. And I would never want a coach to do that, where it's like, well, it's a 5-point game with 3 minutes left, but you've hit a minutes cap.
Yeah.
So go sit down, because that's going to create its own friction. But if you actually manage your minutes better before that point, then maybe we're not in that situation.
Yep.
70 times. The answer was 70
Oh, look.
times.
That's exactly what the other one took.
Yeah.
Was that to get 1 or 2 or just 1?
1 or 2, and I got 1 on the 70th attempt. So,
hey, though, that's even better.
Great. I'm sure glad that, the NBA runs their draft lottery repeatedly until the Suns win it. That'd be a great thing for them to do. They'd be there all day. But
yeah.
I mean, we know we've gotten a number 1 pick, so it can't be completely rigged against us. There has to be a universe out there where we could get another one.
I mean, you subscribe to the multiverse theory. There is one, and it will happen. But also, the time that we got the number 1 pick, we had the most odds by far by any stretch of the imagination. And from what I recall hearing, we actually won the number 1 pick 5 times in a row. They picked our number 5 times in a row, and it threw us out the other 4 times because we already won the first one. So
I would argue that we're still in a pretty good spot. Not even just for this season, which of course has its potential foibles, but like, we have all of our picks. We have good young talent. We have a huge expiring contract at worst in Chris Paul, maybe a functional NBA starter. We're not sure. It's just, at no point this season have we been whole. And again, maybe that's a fool's errand because everybody's like constantly dealing with injuries and whatever else. But like, considering the Jay Crowder situation, we haven't been whole the entire season. Mm-hmm. So if there's some reason we're able to get Kyle Kuzma, I don't know how that happens. I think people are a little too crazy for that. But if we did bring in Kyle Kuzma, all of a sudden it's like, well, shit, now what do we have? We don't know. Hell, even just like as a specific Cam Johnson example, he turned down the extension. What does his offseason look like? We don't know. He's played like 6 games this season. Does he get more than that still? It's a lot harder to justify than it would have been otherwise, right? So like, there's a ton of question marks right now.
We don't have a power forward, and that's our best option of power forward right now.
Well, like, the problem is fucking who wants us? Like, we're like, oh, we can package Jay Crowder and like, well, so-and-so. It's like, who makes that trade? Well, they don't want him either. And the same, Kyle Kuzma. Yeah, Crowder for Kuzma. I think everybody in the world knows that's terrible. I know we're going to probably throw in some picks. It's going to take a lot to pry him away.
I mean, the only thing we have is I don't know if Washington wants to pay Kuzma. Granted, I don't think we want to pay Kuzma either. It depends on what the new owner wants to do and how much he wants to go in the luxury tax. If he wants to go in the luxury tax, great. Let's figure out a way to make that happen because I think it'd be fantastic. But it's not going to happen.
I'd rather play Kyle Kuzma than Cam Johnson. Sorry. I mean, look, I love Cam and Mikal. They're bromance. They're both like excellent. We talked about them as a potential Kevin Durant trade and how well it would hurt to lose them. We'd be like, sorry, guys, bye, because it's Kevin Durant. Yeah. But even again, like Kuzma, like, of course, Kuzma for Crowder straight up stupid, but Kuzma's expiring. And again, is Washington going to want to pay him $25 million a year? I don't know. And if you want to create the space to sign Kuzma, you also have the option of, I don't know, trading Ayton, getting rid of Chris Paul. Like, there's ways to do it. And because we have all of our picks, you can attach those in deals that will make sense. The question, and the one we can't answer right now because we haven't been whole, is it worth committing to more win now moves, or is it just worth staying the course and bringing in other young players to try and join this current core?
Well, the Golden State example is great. Now, this year, they've hit a roadblock. It looks like they weren't quite ready for Jonathan Kuminga to inherit the team. But if it wasn't for their development, they don't win the title last year either. So it's like, it's just something we don't do. and we probably should.
Well, and it really sucks that we're under such a time constraint here. I mean, we have till February 9th as the trade deadline. That means we've got, what is that, 23 days or so, or 20, we don't have we really don't have a long time left that we can figure this out. And if everybody can come back next week, if Booker can come back, Paul can come back, Johnson can come back next week, and we can see a 2-week stretch where like, okay, we're over 500, we're a 60% win team, something like that. And it's like, okay, hey, we can go make a win now move. If they don't come back, I don't know what we do here. It's really a tough thing if they don't come back in the next 2 weeks.
You can argue that, John Collins, Kyle Kuzma, whomever, those players match our timeline. They're mid-20s. That's our core, except for Chris Paul being 75. So, you just kind of roll the dice and hope that either it works out this season or you make the commitment to future seasons because that group will just age together. Because I think, I don't want to sound too harsh, Sean, because you're right to an extent, but, even with the Warriors and their infamous development, we saw the Marquise Chris situation where they were all head over heels about it. No, he hasn't had the right opportunity. He's fucking trash still, and he's gone. Kuminga can barely get on the floor. Wiseman looks like a bust. They've even tried to develop these folks, and they can't do it either.
Yeah.
It's tough when you're trying to win now because you can't give them meaningful minutes in games that matter. So, hell, even Jordan Poole, who, I don't want to be too hard on the guy. I don't dislike him, but, he's kind of been trash this year.
Yeah.
By some advanced metrics, he's been one of the worst players in the NBA. So, it just goes to show you things change quick. We've seen it for us. We've seen it for everybody. Hell, look at the Celtics. You could pencil in Tatum and Brown for 37 minutes a night. But Brown's going to miss a couple weeks now because everybody gets hurt.
Man, the Celtics, they're just they are the blueprint that I hope we reach. Where, they were good. They've had the same team for a while. They were borderline going to get broken up, I think, last year at some point. It was it's not working. We're just not winning. And then they turned a corner, and now they're, the best team in the league.
Yeah. And they went through the Kyrie Irving situation, the Gordon Hayward situation, which, wasn't anybody's fault. He just broke his foot off his foot. But, they were able to weather those types of adversity and then come out strong on the other side, partly because their young guys, Tatum, Brown, kind of Marcus Smart, etc., were that good. This is our storm, and the question is, are we going to weather it or get destroyed by it? And we're going to find out partially in the next 3 weeks and partially in this upcoming offseason.
It's a good cliffhanger.
Yep.
I like it.
Next week might be a trivia show. We'll have to kind of see there's some moving pieces involved. Will somebody still be in town? Blah, blah, blah. But there is one that's ready to go. It has a new game in it. It's probably what we'll do next week. We've mentioned a few of the other things coming up. We will get to the Pokemon review because I have a lot of things to say about that. There's other stuff coming up. We won't talk about the Suns for a while. If for some reason they get Kevin Durant at the trade deadline, we'll obviously change course and do an emergency podcast. But when we trade for, Jalen McDaniels, we probably aren't going to do a show about it.
Nope.
We could talk about the trade deadline maybe if something happens. So, maybe 3 weeks from now. Maybe.
I'm not ruling it out. I'm just saying, as of right now, I don't expect James Jones to make a deal that moves the needle enough to make me want to talk about it.
I got to protect my my streak in trivia. So...
Your one?
No, my losing. No. You won. You've won 3 in a row now. But that means I've lost 3 in a row. And if I can have the all-time losing streak, then I'm going to go for it.
You can tank for Wembayama.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wobbly for Wemby.
Oh, that's what we should do is every time you lose, you start the next game with a handicap. It doesn't really matter, though, because it all comes down to the wheel,
That damn wheel.
You give me 1,000-point handicap, I'm going to hit the bankrupts at the end. It's going to be for naught.
I'm gonna play like Sean's old you don't know Jack rules, where after the 10th question, that's the actual final result. The Jack attack doesn't matter.
That's true.
Yeah.
Although the one that I won, I was ahead, but before the wheel. And everyone that you won, I think you were ahead by the wheel.
I think so far we have not had a come from behind win. There's been some fiddliness because of when the bankrupts were hit, but it hasn't horribly overturned a result. Because having the lead is an advantage.
Yeah.
It is still down to luck, but I sort of programmed it to be that way, and luckily it seems to be working.
And there was a little bit of controversy one time, but I don't think it was the difference between me even ending the first part with a lead, and then I hit the bankrupt anyway, so it didn't fucking matter. God, I hit the bankrupt. It wasn't even that likely that I was going to hit it, and I did. It's what do you do, man? It's the wheel.
I might retool the wheel at some point. If I do so, I'm going to add more bankrupts and some other stuff too, but we'll have to see. I went through a lot of testing on that to get to a point here where it was okay, at least now we know, you can't have a wheel that forces you to hit a bankrupt. We got outside of that. Like it's holding up, but we'll see.
No,
we get a bigger sample size.
I'm great with it. It is luck, but like I'm like that's the game. Yep.
And there has to be a comeback mechanic. If there's no luck, then we might as well crown the champion of whoever has the score at the end, because it's formulaic then.
Exactly.
It is also a little weird that it comes down to true-false questions, but hey,
we
50-50.
also Fire Emblem could be a review.
Fire Emblem could be a review
coming up.
Have to do Pokemon first.
Oh yeah, no, we definitely do.
Yeah, but I think all three of me and Sean and Michaela will play it, so I know the two of them will, and I'm pretty sure I will. Hell, IGN gave it a 9 today, so. If I was hesitant, I don't know why I would be. Maybe I'll just pre-order it tonight.
The reviews are, it's the game I keep saying this phrasing. It's the game we thought it was going to be. So for good or for ill, mostly for good. But yeah, we'll talk about it.
Yeah. Alrighty.
And maybe we can find out if the Suns were the team we thought they would be.
Maybe we'll find out here soon.
Alrighty. That's the end of the episode. In between shows, you can find us at our website, objectionnetwork.com or youtube.com/objectionnetwork, where you can watch this very podcast and also the Pokemon Quetzal run that is kind of going sideways at times. If you watch it, you'll see why. There's another death coming up. Spoiler alert. When? Where? Who? Tune in and find out. We'll see you next time.